Eric Hanson is live at Merrill Middle School in Des Moines.
Yeah, Stacey, take a look at this hallway. We're live here and take a look at exactly what is happening. This is registration process going on in the hallway of Merrill Middle School, one of 1,681 caucus sites across the state of Iowa. Come in a little bit closer and take a look. Take a look at these are folks registering, signing up for the caucuses. It's alphabetically set up right here. 6 different tables, as you are looking at right now, alphabetically of people just in this precinct. This precinct specifically is mostly the Waterbury neighborhood as well as the south of Grand neighborhood, and then far at the end of the hallway around the corner there is another table set up for new registrations. Then beyond that, way at the far end of the hallway, there are 2 Republican caucuses going on here. They are expecting in this building more than 1,000 people tonight, and if turnout is something to watch, this picture right now should give you the picture that a lot of people are showing out now. Let's go around the corner and go inside the gymnasium and show you exactly what's happening. This is the Democratic caucus number 62, and then as you can see, when you walk in the door, there are Hillary for President people trying to kind of do some calculations and figure out what's going on. Take a look around this room right now. The first person showed up at 4:45 this afternoon, and look at the crowd already a half hour before the caucus starts. You can see that most of the Hillary for President folks are gathered on this side of the room. Most of the Bernie for President folks are located on the far end of the room, and right in the middle you can see a Martin O'Malley. That's the area specifically in this caucus area and in every precinct around the state that you're going to want to watch. Where are the O'Malley supporters going to move, if they don't have viability? And that viability is what's so key here in Democratic caucuses. Let's sneak up here toward the front. We have crews here from around the world. We're going to talk with Karen, I wanted to bug you for a little bit. I talked to Karen a little bit ago. We're live on Channel 8 this morning. Tell me about you're a Hillary supporter. Why are you backing Hillary tonight?
I'm backing Hillary because I think she is the most pragmatic of the candidates. You know, they're all articulate, they're all idealists, but I think she has the real life experience. I was very impressed with her when she held up so well to the grueling testimony that they gave when they interviewed her in Congress for hours and hours and hours. I know, I could never have done that.
When did you decide you wanted to caucus for Hillary?
I've been leaning toward Hillary for, you know, ever, I think, but I've tried to keep an open mind and make sure I was hearing all the candidates speak, and I tried to, and I'm still supporting Hillary.
See how it plays out.
Yeah,
Karen, pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time with us. Again, a big crowd here at Merrill, and they're still coming in a half hour till caucus time. We'll be here live the entire night to see what's happening. Stephen, Stacey.
All right, Eric, I do have a question for you very quickly. Are you seeing any outward signs of support? I saw that there is a T-shirt or a button or two, but are you seeing a bunch and maybe getting a sense for support there tonight?
Yes, absolutely. The Hillary for Clinton folks have brought people together, and as soon as they come in, if they say that they're going to caucus for Hillary, they'll put a sticker on them. You can see there, I'm caucusing for Hillary. They are all over the place. At the other end, the Bernie Sanders folks are doing the exact same thing. So there are signs like that. There are no signs allowed on the walls, but once they actually start breaking up into preference groups, there will be some big signs, as you can see right over here on the wall, caucus for Hillary here. That sign will move out on the floor, and then that's where the physical movement of folks will be happening. Gather around that sign. All that will be playing out right here on the gym floor. Again, we have media crews. Take a look, Courtney, turn around here if you would. We have media crews from around the world here, from France here, from the Middle East, from Japan. It is amazing to actually just see the coverage, specifically because this is one of the largest caucus sites in the metro area. They're expecting 700 or 800 people in this room. So we'll see what happens in the next half hour when things get going. Stephen, Stacey.
All right, Eric Hanson, thank you so much.
7:01, and we want to go to one of the caucus sites.
That's right. Let's check in with Eric Hanson. He's at the Democratic caucus site tonight at Merrill Middle School in Des Moines. Eric?
Just a second ago, Stacey, the crowd kind of got quiet as the precinct chair just started talking. You can see him in the distance past this camera. He's in a blue shirt, and he's the precinct chair. He's kind of calling the meeting to order. But take a look at this crowd. This is Merrill Middle School. Keep in mind, this is one of 1,681 meetings like this across the state, and it is huge. There are hundreds of people that started gathering here at 4:45 this afternoon. Let's just wander through the crowd and show you how packed this is. This is a gym floor, and not only are there people here who are on the floor, but then in the distance you can also see that people are sitting on the ground, sitting on folding chairs, and then in the distance the entire bleachers are filled with people. This place is packed, and they expected this to be a packed crowd from the very beginning. This is a very involved neighborhood, both in the Waterbury area and the south of Grand area. They had 565 caucus goers 8 years ago when President Obama was elected. Keep in mind there was no Democratic caucus 4 years ago because of the incumbency, but this is what's been happening. Let's take a look at some graphics and show you exactly what's going to be happening here over the next couple of minutes. First, this Democratic precinct is going to elect a chair. That person is pretty much presumed to be the person at the front of the room. His name is Jeff. He's in charge of this caucus area. Then becomes the challenge right away. They have to start counting every individual person in this room. There could be 700 or 800 people in this room, and they're going to have to count them off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to verify how many people are in this room. After they count everyone in this room, then all 700 or 800 people in this room will have to move into a presidential preference area, physically get up and gather around a sign that says Hillary people gather over here, Bernie folks gather over here, O'Malley people gather over here. That's going to take some time too. After that happens, then they calculate viability. Remember, you have to have 15% as a candidate to be viable. At that point, they figure out who's viable, who isn't, and then the horse trading starts. If you aren't viable, then the arguments start. Not arguments, but the horse trading starts. Who's going to move over from one camp to another? That could take up to a half hour at this site, and then they figure out how many delegates. So back here live at Merrill Middle School, you can see the crowd is huge, and they're getting ready to go. They're trying to register just the final people through the door, so the meeting hasn't actually officially started here. A lot of pictures taking place, a lot of crowds gathering out. I've actually seen folks, moms who have brought in their just weeks-old baby into this room. There's also folks with canes who have kind of limped into this room. It's a challenge to come to a Democratic caucus, but this many people just from this neighborhood are gathered here at Merrill Middle School to take part in this event. It's it's democracy in action, and to see it happen, this is what everything is about. Steve and Stacy.
Okay, Eric, is everybody in the room, or are there some people still out in the hall trying to get in?
Just before you went live to me, I took a look out in the hallway. There were probably about a dozen or so folks who were registering, filling out the rest of the paperwork. Most of them have been in the room here for about a half hour, but the stragglers are coming in. I wouldn't say everybody is in here, but most folks are in here, and probably only about a half of them actually have a seat to sit down. There are about 400 capable of being up in the bleachers. On the floors, another 150 or so, and so you can do the math and figure that we've got a lot of people. In fact, right in front of Courtney's picture, you got kids playing on the ground, playing some games. You've got some strollers here with O'Malley stickers on them. This is an all-age event. We've had people, actually I had a senior citizen woman walk up to me a few minutes ago and said, remind me why we do the caucuses and don't just show up. Well, this is the process that we have here in Iowa. It's an exciting process to actually see unfold, playing games and just watching things happen. It's quite an event here at Merrill Middle School, and keep in mind this is one of 1,681 places like this across Iowa. Quite an evening ahead of us.
All right, Eric, thank you very much. Let's go back to that guy who's been telling us all about how the Democratic caucuses are run. Eric Hanson over at Meredith Middle School in Des Moines, and Eric has an update for us.
Yeah, well, actually, Steve, they're actually just getting going, and so the volume of the room has kind of gone quiet because there's one speaker for this massive room. They're kind of doing a little bit of parliamentary stuff, passing the envelope for the Democratic Party, both here in Polk County as well as the state of Iowa, but then also just dispensing with things like who is actually the chair of this meeting. Jeff up at the podium is actually the person who's in charge. So now let's listen in just a little bit of the logistics of what he's actually talking about tonight. We're going to listen in for just a second. Logistically, this is a challenge.
We're going to try to count this room, two people counting the room, one counting the right half and one counting the left half. Our hope is that will have the time that it'll take to do this.
So now the process begins, Steve and Stacey. This is what we've been talking about, all of the logistics of things. With people listening in the room, let's listen to what he's saying. Just a second.
In time, I need all media, print, broadcast, to move behind me. We are now starting the count.
So as a result, that is a challenge specifically here at this place, because there is not only media here from the Des Moines area in the United States, but we have media from Austria and Norway and Sweden, Japan, the United Kingdom, all over the world are physically here in this room. This is the process that begins things, because before anybody can even break into preference groups, we have to figure out how many people are physically in this room, and that's the division that starts exactly who is viable. So this is just the first step in a long process tonight here at this one caucus site to figure out how many people are in the room. Then we break into different presidential preference groups, and then we figure out, then we begin the horse trading. So this is going to be quite a challenge. Keep in mind that we've been here, it's about 7:20 or so here in Des Moines. And so trying to kind of create some order in all of this, it's not chaos, but it's a challenge, because most of these people don't exactly know what's going on. And we have one speaker at the beginning of the room. Steve and Stacey, this is going to be quite a challenge over the next 15 minutes to get this logistics of this room counted and then figure out the logistics from there.
All right, Eric, thank you very much. Nice work explaining that.
Well, we need to check back in with Eric Hanson, who's with the Democratic Caucus tonight. Eric?
Stacey, the key of the game here at Merrill Middle School is organization, and right now it's a matter of counting. Way over in the corner along the wall to the left, you can see there are still a few people holding up their hands. The first order of business is just to plain count the number of people in the room. Right now they're starting with counting the number of people on the floor, and as you can see some hands going down, that means they are counted. There's somebody counting this left-hand side of the room. There's somebody else counting the right-hand side of the floor. Once they get everybody on the floor counted, then they're going to ask everybody in the stands and in those chairs to stand up, and as they count them off, they will sit down. So there are two people physically counting how many Democratic Precinct Caucus residents are from this neighborhood in this room. That is going to take a little while. They are approaching getting done with the end of what's actually happening on the floor. Now you can see up there on the stands, they are all standing up. So now what's going to happen is every person, as they go down the line, they will count off 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all important, because to figure out who wins and who needs viability and who has viability, they have to figure out who is physically in this room. So the left side of the bleachers is now standing up. In just a second, you'll probably see the folks on the right side of the bleachers stand up as they begin to count off 1, 2, 3, 4, how many people are in the room. I don't have an estimate on how many people are physically here. I know that 8 years ago when President Obama was elected, in this room there were 562 people. The geographic footprint of this particular caucus has grown over the 8 years, so they're guessing before the night started that they were expecting between 700 and 800 people in this room. I'd say that that's probably a safe bet in that neighborhood. So that if you can see there on the left, the guy in the blue shirt, he is going down the row, counting off 1, 2, 3, 4, asking people to sit down. They are then counted for the total count in the room. Once they have that number physically counted, then they will ask all of these people to break off. The Hillary people on the left side of the room, the Bernie people on the right side of the room, the Martin O'Malley people in the middle. You can see that there are 3 signs in the middle of the gymnasium. That's where they will gather around, and then they have to do this counting process again. All told, this requires a lot of organization and a lot of just coordination and a lot of cooperation from all of these people who are in here, who a lot of them don't even know exactly what is happening. There's one speaker in the front of the room. There's probably about 40 or 50 international members of the press watching this particular precinct, because this is one of the largest in the metro area, and it's handy for the folks who've flown in from Paris or London or Tokyo to watch Iowans in action. So this is a big stage. You can hear the murmur of the crowd starting to gather a little bit, but as these things started, people have really been gathering to try to realize, okay, this is going to take a while. We all need to be on the same page and make this work. We'll stop back in just a few minutes. Check back in with us very soon, and we'll let you know what's happening after they get done counting here at Merrill Middle School. Steve and Stacey.
All right, Eric, thank you.
And well, let's get back on over to Eric Hanson. He's at one of the biggest caucus sites in town, the Democratic Caucus, over at Merrill Middle School in Des Moines. Eric.
Yes, Steve, the breaking news kind of at this moment is they finished the count in this room, and the count of people in this room is 765 people. That's a huge number, more than 200 more than were here 8 years ago when President Obama was elected. They did the quick math, and 15% of that means that if any one group doesn't have 115 caucus goers in their group, they are not viable. So to kind of dispense with the formality of it, the precinct chair asked that we just kind of dispense with things and say, okay, how about O'Malley folks and uncommitted folks come up to the room? Then we'll count you and we'll decide whether or not you have 115 people. So that's what's happening. Essentially, the Sanders people have backed off, the Clinton folks have backed off, and the O'Malley and the undecided voters have come right up to the front of the room. You're looking at them right now. We're listening to the precinct chair. The O'Malley folks are raising their hands, so we're going to count those people. It's essentially a way to avoid counting all 765 people one more time. So now they're going by one. These people with their hands up are caucusing tonight for Martin O'Malley. Out of this room of 716, they're trying to figure out if there are 115 people. If there are 115 people, they are viable. If not, these people with their hands up are up for grabs, and that's what they're determining now. So one by one, they're dropping their hands. You can see there in the distance, there's an O'Malley sign coming in. They are hoping that they will have 115 people here, so they have the ability to essentially get a delegate to the county Democratic Party coming up in a couple of months. At this point, we're not sure. It looks to me like it's going to be close, so we're going to see what's happening. Then on the far side of this group, past the folks to the right of who has their hands up, those are uncommitted people, people who aren't caucusing for O'Malley or Clinton or Sanders. So this group is the deciding factor. Who's going to kind of be arguing over and trying to sway over people from this group? If we wait just a couple of more seconds, we may have a number here. We're getting to the last hands down. The person with the official number is coming forward, and let's hear what they're saying here to Jeff, the precinct chair, as what exactly happens here. The official number is coming to the front.
I've got 51 O'Malley.
51 O'Malley is the correct number, so that's half of viability. They needed about 15%, but they actually got about 5%. So now the question becomes, what is going to happen with those people? Are they going to change sides to go to Sanders? Are they going to change sides to go to Clinton? Or are they going to be, let's say, given some extra people by Clinton in order to keep them from going to Sanders or something along those lines? So that's the process as it's playing out now. If you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, that's kind of what's happening now, and then we'll kind of continue to check back in. Again, all the people on the left side are Clinton supporters, on the right side, Sanders supporters, and right in the middle, these are the people that are going to be kind of trying to be persuaded over the next few minutes.
Okay, Eric, are you seeing some movement? Because we've got kind of a wide shot there. People are going to have to make a move, as you just described. You seeing anybody move from one camp to the next?
We aren't, but I'm overhearing people kind of talking, okay, what do we do now? If you look just to the left, Courtney, you can see to the left in front of you, you can see some folks with the Hillary Clinton stickers and t-shirts over to the left, and they are kind of waiting in the wings, trying to figure out, okay, when is the appropriate time to kind of not pounce, but when's the appropriate time, and these precinct captains, when's the appropriate time to walk up to these O'Malley supporters and say, hey, make their pitch, come over to my side. So they're kind of creating their game plan. The campaigns have a pre-described plan of what they would do at this case, but they didn't know whether there was going to be, 15 people or 500 people here from O'Malley. So now the Clinton and Sanders people are trying to figure out their game plan, and so are the O'Malley people trying to figure out what's exactly next.
The people who are doing the convincing have to be diplomatic, or to put it a better way, they have to be Iowa nice, don't they?
That's exactly right, because if you can easily turn off somebody, and that can make the difference between an entire delegate at the county convention. All of those delegates really add up. Now to the right of the podium, you can see the people raising their hands. Those are the officially uncommitted people. Those are going to be up for grabs no matter what. Maybe the O'Malley folks can kind of persuade them to come on over to their side. Watch them come over. There's probably a couple dozen, I'm going to guess. I haven't got an official number, but
we've now counted
okay, let's
O'Malley,
listen.
And we've counted uncommitted. Now we're going to start counting Bernie Sanders supporters and then Hillary Clinton supporters.
So that's obviously a much bigger one. Just a second.
The process is going to move a lot faster if we keep the volume in the room down.
So we know just by what I've overheard, the O'Malley folks are not viable, neither are the uncommitted, but we don't know exactly what's going on.
We counted
51 O'Malley supporters, 6 uncommitted in this room. They needed 115 to be viable. So those folks are going to be up for grabs here in a few minutes. And if you check back in with us pretty soon, you'll figure out what exactly happens here at Merrill Middle School, one of many sites where this exact same thing is happening across the state. Steve, Stacy.
And Dennis, you were saying that
Thank you, Eric.
They were talking about all the national and international media at these caucuses.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Iowa caucuses are just covered wall to wall, not just by American media, but by foreign media. I've talked to multiple journalists from Sweden, from Norway, from France, from Germany, from Britain, from South Korea, from Japan. They're fascinated by this process, although when I explain it to them, their faces are a mixture of fascination and disbelief. They do what? So because they have a very different party system, the way it works from ours.
Do they ever say they think it's kind of dumb?
Yeah, a lot of times they raise the question, they're very concerned, isn't this very undemocratic? And I mentioned the point again that it's not strictly speaking an election of delegates to the National Convention. Remember, it's run by the parties, not by the state election machinery. So, you know, again, with people who work a 3 to 11 shift, they can't participate. The Democrats have tried to telecaucus now for people in the service to try to come in. We'll see how many are able to do that. But that's what the European concern seems to be quite a lot.
Well, as they continue to count up the delegates, the voters here in the caucus locations, we're going to take a break and we will be right back. And now we need to check in with the Democrats and see how their caucus is doing at Merrill Middle School tonight. Eric Hanson is there with an update.
Stacy, they are just getting done with a number of the caucus number. They've counted everybody off. They are they're kind of threatening to do the count again. Essentially, when it boils down to it, there are 767 people in the room, about 500 of them. Almost 500 of them.
This is the challenge of a count of this
This
many
is the
people.
number. Just a second. Let's listen in.
This is the challenge of a count of this many people. You're absolutely correct. That's 900 people. They don't have 900 people in the room. So again, I hate to say this, folks. This is the challenge. We're going to have to count the Sanders and the Clinton group again. I apologize. We're doing the best. Dick and Ira and I are doing the best we can, but we got to get this right.
So let me tell you exactly what's happening. First, they counted all 767 people in the room. After they counted all 767 people in the room, then they asked the O'Malley people to come to the front of the room, and there were about 60 people in the room. That's not enough to be viable. So as a result, not enough to be viable.
Yes.
Just a second. There's a suggestion being offered in the room.
Yes.
They're asking a suggestion here to try to figure out how to better count these, because essentially there were 767 people counted in the room. They added up the Sanders people, who had about 350. They added up the Hillary folks in this room. There were about 550. And then they counted up the O'Malley people. There were about 60. That adds up to 900 people in this room. Actually, the actual number was 767. So they're trying to figure out how to remedy those numbers to try to figure out exactly how to do this best without calling all 900 people. So they're trying to just kind of ask for suggestions to try to figure out how this resolves itself with all 767 people in the room. You mentioned just a couple of seconds ago. Just a second.
Of the caucus, I did ask that the folks on the floor stand in lines of 10. I did ask that. Rose, I'm sorry.
So essentially, they're kind of trying to figure out exactly what to do now, because they know that there are a whole lot of eyes watching. The math isn't adding up here at Merrill Middle School, and they're trying to figure out what to do. So they are going to recount for the second time this crowd of about 767 people. this is a wrinkle, and this is one of the reasons why folks wondering exactly, well, why do we do it this way? Well, this is what we do. You mentioned kids. There are a lot of kids in the fringes of the crowd who are watching. They're also getting a lesson in patience and persistence and trying to be civil in a crazy situation that is kind of challenging. So what they're doing is they're reorganizing this room in physical rows to try to count a second time. Before, again, we haven't even started the rallying for exactly where the O'Malley people go. So, well, you can check back in with us in a little bit, but that's what's unfolding here at Merrill Middle School. They're recounting a second time how many Bernie supporters and how many Hillary supporters are in the room. Steve and Stacy?
Well, and they also, Eric, have to make sure that nobody leaves before this is all done, because then that throws off the math again.
That's the challenge.
And some people may leave not having heard that there's an issue, or they've just decided I've given enough time and it's time to go home.
Exactly, and they might have something going on tonight, and for example, the O'Malley people have already been asking, can we move yet? Well, no, you can't move yet, because we need to get a count first of how many people we have in the room first, and then you can move. I have talked already with some of the O'Malley people in the room. They said, yeah, we kind of have a game plan of where we're going to go if we aren't viable. We walked in with that idea, and those again are big sway voters with a close election and the polls being 45-43 between Clinton and Sanders. That can make a big difference where those 1 or 2 delegates go here and there as the night goes on. So you see the hands going up here on the Sanders side of the room. They're recounting over there to try to figure out, okay, they counted 300 people on that side of the room. They counted 500 on the Hillary side, and there were only supposed to be 767 people in the room. So counting number 2, they're asking for people to be calm, be patient, and be orderly and quiet in this room as they try to resolve this math challenge here at Merrill Middle School.
Eric, give me an idea of the level of the frustration in that room right now. Are people getting a little ticked off?
It's not frustration. It's more, I see a lot of people kind of looking at each other going, okay, we have to do this again? Well, yeah, we have to do it again. So it's not so much frustration at this point. We've only been here a full hour since the caucus has officially started. It's not frustration yet, but I did ask a couple of people, I did hear a couple of people saying, can they turn on an air conditioner? It's kind of getting hot. There are with the international members of the media here, probably 50 or so of those, plus the 767, plus some campaign workers. I talked to some visitors from California who just came in to work for the Clinton campaign. There have to be close to 900 people in this gymnasium. It's in the middle of winter, but they're kind of hoping that the air conditioner goes on, and pretty soon they're going to need some bathroom breaks and some water coming in. So check back in with me in about 10 or 15 minutes, and the exhaustion might be ticking up at that point.
Oh, that's right. Eric, thank you so much.
Let's see what's going on at that very busy Democratic caucus over at Merrill Middle School in Des Moines. Eric Hanson, the guy who's been working really hard tonight, is going to fill us in with what's going on. Eric.
Yeah, the temperature's kind of rising here in this room, Steve and Stacy. It's about 10 after 8 now. The folks have been in here, some of them for going on 2 hours. The second round of counting has just ended. Again, to recap what has been happening over the last few hours, they counted the room and got 767 people. Then they counted the O'Malley people, got about 60 folks, got 6 uncommitted, and then they counted the Clinton and the Sanders people. They got about 500 Clinton and about 300 Sanders, but that doesn't add up to 767, so they had to count a second time. That count is kind of coming in now from the folks who've been counting, but we've had some people over their shoulders saying, hey, I wasn't counted this time. So let's take a listen and see what's going on here in the room.
Everybody can have your attention, please. Thank you. We have for our count for Sanders 246, and we have for Clinton 508. That's after 2 counts. Now, this is what I'm going to say. Because I've had a discussion with this gentleman back right here in terms of, is the count accurate? At this point, at 8 o'clock, we should do a realignment. Because what these numbers are really doesn't make a difference. We need to do a realignment and allow the campaigns for O'Malley and uncommitted to decide what they want to do. And I'm showing 8:11. I will declare now a 30-minute realignment period. This will give the Clinton and O'Malley and Bernie Sanders. What is the problem here? We got to do a realignment.
Folks are upset right now because they're thinking 30 minutes more of just standing around here. They're wondering essentially if it could be less than that, or so. So there's questions kind of coming in and some frustrations from both the Sanders folks and the O'Malley and the Sanders people of what exactly is going in. There's a little bit of it's getting a little bit warm in here. Courtney, if you turn around, we're going to be joined here by Phil Lipoff. Phil is our reporter from our Boston station. Phil, I'm guessing you've never experienced the caucuses before. Give us your take on what you're seeing here tonight.
Well, I take it this is a little bit out of the ordinary as well, even for you. So I've been in the business 20 years, covered a lot of things. Never seen the Iowa caucus, so I was expecting something fascinating, something I've never seen before. It's delivering. I mean, the first count, 900 people in the room, there aren't. Second count, you have a man over here arguing that he wasn't counted. You have the chairman say, it doesn't matter, we need to realign people right now. It's wild, but this is, I guess, what democracy looks like here.
It is. Us Iowans were kind of used to something like this. At the same time, you haven't experienced this. Does this give ammunition, you think, to the folks from outside of Iowa saying, why are we doing this way? Or does it just kind of give you the fascination of, this is really cool?
Well, I've asked myself, why is it done this way? But it's the way Iowa's done it. And everybody is serious. Everybody came out here. They want to be counted. They came here physically. And this is what it looks like. So I don't know. I think people in Boston are fascinated by this. I've been tweeting all night and doing live shots for the Boston area, and tremendous interest from people in Boston.
Phil Lipoff from our sister station at WCVB in Boston, one of dozens and dozens of international and national media here, just physically in Merrill Middle School. The challenge now, though, is there was an audible gasp in the crowd when they said, we have 30 minutes to do some realignment. Now, I've overheard folks saying, we have kids in the crowd, we have old people, it's getting hot and bothered at this point. And so there's now officially at 8:15 is the point where there's some frustration setting in at Merrill Middle School gym. Again, this is a large, physically a lot of people in this room, and now the challenge begins with the Hillary folks and the Bernie folks in the middle. You're going to see them. They're standing up saying, hey, O'Malley folks, come over to our side. We want your delegates. So now physically, I am seeing some folks leaving the room. In the distance, I do see some folks leaving the room. I don't know if they're going out to get a drink or if they're physically leaving the gymnasium out of frustration. Either way, we're now been out this an hour and a half, and now the horse trading begins. So you're seeing 90% of the people plus staying right where they are and getting a little frustrated. At the same time, another maybe 10% of the folks are going, what's going on? Let's listen into a couple of the talkings going on right here in the middle of the crowd.
Including uncommitted, how many more we need?
51 is us, and then we have 6 uncommitted, so we need
57.
811 divided times, just say. Sorry.
So what they're doing is this is an O'Malley precinct captain. He is doing some math to try to figure out, okay, how many more would we need to be viable? What they need to do is they need to get 110 people on their side to get a delegate. It might be that the Hillary folks will say, hey, we'll give you a couple dozen so that you can be viable just so we can go home. That could happen. We'll see what happens over the next little while as things kind of progress here. It's kind of getting crazy, honestly, here at Merrill Middle School, but this is the Democratic caucuses in action. Stephen Stacey.
It sure is. Eric, thank you for bringing it to us in all the details.
Eric's doing a very good job of staying right on top of it. Eric, thank you very much. Dennis, we do need to get right over to Eric Hanson at Merrill Middle School in Des Moines. A very, very busy Democratic caucus there. Eric.
Yeah, Steve, Kim's Republican caucus is now done here in the Democratic caucus at Merrill Middle School. It is still going, but over the last half hour, a lot of decisions and discussion has been happening with the Martin O'Malley folks. What has happened is it's all a matter of exact delegates. I'm going to sneak over here. I'm going to sneak over here and say, I'm Eric Hanson from over at Channel 8. Tell me kind of what that last half hour was like. Describe the decision making that you had to do.
Well, I had to, finally figure out what the offer from either side was. Just a moment.
Yes.
And once I had the contours of a deal figured out, I was trying to figure out what would please the most amount of O'Malley supporters, because that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And the Sanders campaign offered us a better deal in the end.
So what ended up kind of happening? It took a half hour to talk. You had an offer from the Clinton folks, an offer from the Sanders
Right.
folks. What ended up happening?
What ended up happening was that we were offered more, initially 3 delegates from each side to send as many as possible. And then Sanders offered 4 and they offered 4. Then it turned out that some people had left, so we weren't able to offer enough to be able to make them happy to give us that many. And then Sanders offered the better deal in the end.
So all of the O'Malley folks moved over to Sanders? Most went to
all.
Sanders. Thank you so
Actually,
much for keeping us up to date. This is quite a situation. It's kind of quiet here. There is a middle of the room that's divided right down the center of the basketball court. All of the left is in favor of Hillary Clinton. All on the right side is in favor of Bernie Sanders. So we are getting ready to just count one more time. There are about 700 or 800 people in this room, and we're hearing some folks in the distance. They're offering, saying, instead of standing around and counting everyone one more time. Again, we've been here now for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. The temperature in the room is definitely increasing, but everyone on the right side is going to be a Bernie Sanders supporter. There are 15 delegates here up for work, but so now they're trying to decide how are we going to count. They're going to start counting one final time. So what's going to happen is everyone on this side of the room is going to start counting off 1, 2, 3 on the floor and then up into the stands to try to figure out how many are on this side of the room. Then the same thing is going to happen on the left side of the room with the Hillary Clinton supporters. They're going to count off 1, 2, 3, 4 and try to do this. Again, about 90% of the folks in this room have just been standing here for the last half hour waiting to kind of decide where those 50 people who are O'Malley supporters are going to be. Most of those O'Malley supporters in this particular room moved over to the Bernie side. Some of them came over to the Clinton side. They were kind of debating, can we get an extra delegate or so out of this if we move over there? That didn't end up happening. So after a half hour, the line is right down the middle of the gym. I'd say 90-some% of the folks are still in this room and are still going to be counted. They've hung in with us now for about 2 hours, so we'll see what happens in the next few minutes as they make this count. We'll send it back to you, Stephen Stacy.
So, Eric, when you were talking about horse trading, you were not kidding. They're horse trading over a single delegate, correct?
It is, and again, there were 50-some folks for O'Malley that were standing right here in the middle of the room, but you see now there is a big empty spot right in the middle of the room. That's where the O'Malley folks have been. I would say probably 2/3 of them went over to the Bernie Sanders side, about 1/3 came over to the Hillary Clinton side, and now we have to count to figure out where the 15 delegates from this exact location go. It's looking like in this particular area there are just plain more people on the Clinton side, but there were some of those O'Malley supporters that simply said, we're not going to go over to the Clinton side, we are only going over that way. So they couldn't bargain as an entire group because as a result then they wouldn't have the buying power of extra delegates in this room. So definitely horse trading is an understatement in this room. It's quite a process to see. Stephen Stacy.
Well, Eric, keep us posted on the count. We have, speaking of numbers, some new numbers for you to take a look at here from the Iowa Republican Caucus.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Let's move on over to Eric Hanson at the Democratic Caucus at Merrill Middle School, which has been a very interesting place all night. Let's see how much more interesting it's gotten. Eric.
Great timing, Steve. Actually, the precinct caucus captain is reading them out.
Ira and Dick were trailed by representatives of both campaigns who have verbally acknowledged to me that they are satisfied with these numbers. Bernie Sanders, 246, Hillary Clinton, 462.
So now what they need to do, those folks on the left side who've been standing here now for 2 hours caucusing for Hillary Clinton, all the people on the right side of the gym have been caucusing for Bernie Sanders. Now they have to do the division to figure out where the 15 delegates go. Essentially, these 15 delegates they do the math, and with 246 Sanders supporters and 462 Clinton supporters, approximately 2/3 of the 15 delegates in this room will be going to Hillary Clinton. About 1/3 of them will be going to Bernie Sanders. None of them will be going to Martin O'Malley. To recap essentially what's been going on, as you see everybody now standing up and heading for the door. They've been in this room. The caucuses officially started 2 hours ago, but the actual folks started gathering here about 3 or 3.5 hours ago. just take a look at everybody just kind of leaving the room now. They're all kind of stretching. They need a drink. They've been in here. The temperature in here is actually quite a bit warmer than it was a couple hours ago when this started. To recap what happened tonight, they had to count everybody in the room. They came up with about 767 people in the room. That was the first count. Then they physically aligned on both sides. There were about 60 people with the O'Malley camp. There were about 2/3 on one side, 1/3 on the other side for Sanders. Then they realigned for about a half hour ago. During that time, the O'Malley folks were trying to get a delegate for O'Malley. They were trying to get 115 folks for O'Malley. That didn't happen. So after a half hour, essentially about 2/3 of the people in the O'Malley group headed over to the Sanders folks. About 1/3 of the folks headed over to the Clinton folks, and that didn't do much to even add to the total. So here at Merrill Middle School, the final results: 462 voters, delegates for Clinton, 246 voters in this precinct for Sanders. It's been a long night. It's been a couple of hours. We've had folks from more than a dozen different foreign countries watching this particular debate. There were some challenges because of the miscounts, but you're trying to count all the different people around the room who are continuing to move. You see the folks filing out of the room now. Essentially, the Clinton folks were satisfied. The Sanders folks a little bit frustrated because they only got 1/3 of the votes in this particular precinct. But here in precinct 62 in the city of Des Moines at Merrill Middle School, it turns out about 2/3 of the 15 delegates are going to go to Hillary Clinton. About 1/3 are going to go to Bernie Sanders. And I guess that's how democracy works in central Iowa. This is the way a lot of folks are kind of raising their eyebrows. This is how we do it. This is how we do it here in central Iowa, and we've been proud to be able to show you over the last couple of hours of what's happening in this, again, as one example of about 1,862 different places around the state that do exactly the same thing. Down the hall, the Republicans wrapped up about an hour ago. We're wrapping things up here at the Democratic Caucus at Merrill Middle School. Stephen, Stacy.
Okay, Eric, thank you very much. A beautiful job of working us through that there. I think Eric should put on a striped shirt at 6 feet 7 inches tall. He'd probably make a heck of a basketball
And
referee.
now he can go home, go to bed, and get back in here to be on the air at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah. You will.